So as I said, everyone, I know I said we do all about NFL concussions today, but this is the whole purpose of the science vlog. You're out in nature and you see something really, really cool and you want to check it out. So again, please enjoy, those of you up north in that polar vortex, enjoy the beautiful Florida sunshine and those beautiful waves. But right here, most importantly, I found a marine biologist.
Hi.
It's Alyssa Svedberg. She got her degree from Nova Southeastern University in marine biology, and she is going to tell us all about what today?
So this right here, you see a bunch of them on the beach today. This one right here is a Portuguese manivore. It's really unique. It's called a siphonophore, which is a relative of the jellyfish. And it really has this awesome, cool blue float that's an air-filled sac. It lets it float on top of the water. And then it has a bunch of these really long jellyfish-like tentacles that hang down into the water. Now these things are beautiful, yes, but they pack a really powerful punch, especially for all those little fish. So they'll sting those little fish in order to capture them, in order to get some of their nutrients. They're not as powerful of a sting to us, but it'll still give you a little bit of a pinch.
Okay, so this is a jellyfish, though.
It's similar to a jellyfish. It's called a siphonophore.
Okay.
So it's a relative of a jellyfish.
So they're
Pretty
not
close.
actually a jellyfish?
Not actually a jellyfish.
Oh, I didn't know that. Did you know that? Leave down in the comments. Did you know that a Portuguese man of war was not an actual jellyfish? I didn't know that. So these, do they pose any actual danger to humans if you got stung by one? Like, would you die? Would you take a long time to die? What's the time frame here?
No, it wouldn't cause any death. It would hurt a little bit, it would sting a little bit, but it's not going to kill you.
Okay.
However, you do see a lot of them washed up on the beach right now, just from the waves and all of the sargassum that washed ashore. So there's a ton of them that are tucked inside of the sargassum and up on the beach. And even though they have been up here for a couple of days and they are starting to dry out, they still can have a lot of venom stored in them. So even though you see them and they're beautiful and you see them on the beach, don't touch them, because they still will give you a little bit of a sting.
All right, and then sargassum is like fancy for like seaweed.
Yes, it's a specific type of seaweed
Okay.
that you find a lot on the shores of Florida.
See, I have to learn something too. I know nothing about this stuff, so I'm glad I have her. I'm glad she's here. And remember, if you see these things, don't touch them, right?
Don't touch them.
But even though we're not supposed to touch them, if you were to accidentally touch one, the top isn't venomous, right?
The top is not venomous. That's
Okay.
just a float, so it just keeps it afloat on the top of the water.
All right. Sounds good. So hopefully you saw this really, really cool Portuguese man of war. I did a good job of capturing it. I'm sorry. But yeah, it's really, really cool. It's very, very popular. Not jellyfish, but jellyfish family. And yeah, so very, very cool that we sort of see these on the beach on Super Bowl Sunday. How does your brain stay healthy inside the skull? So the brain is this organ that is, that jelly that we spoke about in previous vlogs. If you're interested in finding more about that, check out some of the other vlogs, The Amazing Brain and stuff like that, and some of the other vlogs. But the brain is this organ and it's inside the skull. The skull is the bone, right? But what happens is, because we move our heads around a lot back and forth, the brain is held in the skull by fluid called cerebral spinal fluid, or CSF. Now that cerebral spinal fluid, it acts like a cushion. So when I push my head like this and like this, my brain isn't just banging against the hard bone, the skull, it's cushioning against that watery sort of substance that's the CSF. So CSF has a very, very important role in cushioning the brain to make sure it doesn't get hurt or get injured by knocking against the skull too hard. Now, what happens is in football, in spite of having helmets that are supposed to mitigate these concussions and so on, what happens is sometimes that brain whacks against the skull so hard, even though the cerebral spinal fluid is there, it whacks against the skull so hard that it causes a minor bleed in the brain. Now, it's not a major thing, but it is a minor bleed in the brain. If it's a major thing, that's, you see, sort of worse representations. You're not so worried about a concussion at that point, right? You're worried about getting the person to a hospital, making sure, because they are probably unconscious and not responding very much. But a concussed person might be a little dizzy, might have a bit of a headache, might be spinny, might be drowsy, all sorts of things. And these are a result of the area of the brain that might be bleeding a little bit. And this is what's known as a concussion. And these happen often in a lot of different sports, not just American football, but hockey, of course, has your concussions there. Cricket, I've seen cricketers, with the ball bouncing head height, getting hit, even though they have helmets. I've seen cricketers get concussions. Concussions are just about in every single contact sport or any sport that has a contact element to it. It's part of it. It's just part of the game. But what happens is because American football, I've heard it described to as this, as a former NFL player described it. He says, you want to know what it's like to go out there week after week and play football? Put a helmet on and bang, and stand about, so a good 30 feet back, and bang into your garage door, bang your head against the garage door over and over and over again, about 60 times, and then do that the following Sunday, and on the following Sunday, and the following Sunday, every week, till football season is over. And that's what it's like. And I'm just thinking in my head, thinking about it, is that that's a lot of potential for the brain to knock around. So of course the NFL tries to do as best they can to mitigate these concussions, and what they realized most recently is that sending players back out after they've had a concussion to play makes for serious risks of brain damage along in the future. But they keep statistics for as much as they can of concussions that happen in either the preseason of American football, so before competitive games start, and during the regular season games and practices. And in 2012, there was 265 concussions. In 2015, it was 279 concussions. And in 2017, there was 291 concussions. Now, using those 3 years, it sounds like it's just going up, but it's really fluctuating. It's always between sort of 250 and now 300 sort of concussions. But this season, the 2018 season, there are reports, the official numbers are not out yet, but there are reports that the concussions are down by about a third. They're a third less this season, which is great for all players because of certain rules changes. But the reason why this is so important is because sort of the history, the NFL didn't really want to acknowledge that players were getting brain damage by playing football. And it was the hard work of Dr. Bennett Omalu, I want to say that right, Dr. Bennett Omalu. And if you've seen the movie Concussion with Will Smith, that's the character he plays. And he observed, because players, after they have a concussion, there was no screening for concussions, in the early days of football. And he studied, some NFL players, and he said, wow, he observed something called CTE, which is chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Now that's some big words, right? But what it is basically by constantly knocking your head, constant chronic trauma to the brain, encephalopathy, there's a sort of swelling, right? There's a sort of disease to do with the brain. And what happens is the brain starts to deteriorate or atrophy, right? The brain actually starts to get smaller. And I'll make sure I put up lots of pictures to show you what this looks like. And Dr. Bennett Omalu really studied this because a lot of NFL players, and I mean, I put my, caution to all viewers now, it's going to get a little deep. Nothing's going to get graphic, but it's going to get a little deep, a little stronger topics now in the vlog. But Dr. Omalu saw that quite a number of players were committing suicide, unfortunately, and they were very aggressive. Their memory was not great as they became older, and not old by a chronological standard. They were 50 and 60, and they were losing their memory, and they were very aggressive, and a lot of them took their own lives. And through doing an autopsy on those individuals, Dr. Omalu found that their brain looked like an Alzheimer's patient or a Parkinsonian patient. It looked like they had a serious neurodegenerative disease. And that's what Dr. Omalu found back in the early 2000s. And this CTE, I just want to read something quick that I read about it, is that the effect of the injury it's just caused by multiple traumatic brain issues, especially multiple concussions can cause it. And it says the effect of CTE causes the brain to waste away or atrophy. And the injuries to the nerve cells are very, very susceptible to damage, because once they're damaged, they cannot repair themselves. Once a nerve cell dies in your brain, it doesn't come back. That's it. So he discovered that and characterized this CTE by all of this, the brain just looking that's completely eaten away. And, for those of you who might be familiar, there's a famous player from New England, the New England Patriots, tight end Aaron Hernandez, who had a very violent outbreak, in his behavior. And, CTE doesn't necessarily cause, and that's something in science that we're always very concerned with. So nothing causes anything, but if your brain is turned to mush and you have behavioral issues, if your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that's important for cognition and reasoning and behavior, a lot of behavioral things, if that's turned to mush, if it's turned to, wet cereal that's sat around in the bowl for too long, and that's what it's become, there's going to be behavioral issues there. There's just going to be. And a lot of players suffer with this, so the NFL tries to be as best they can sort of on top of it. And I found a study that was relating this CTE, the chronic traumatic encephalopathy, to concussions. And these things are directly related, because if there's a brain bleed and damage to the brain, neurons die. If it happens over and over again, you're going to get CTE happening. So I found a really interesting article that I'll link down in the description below. And the whole point of this vlog is to increase awareness. We can enjoy football and everything like that. I'm a big football fan. We can enjoy sports. But when we see sometimes rule changes happen and we see big things happening, most of it, we might not always agree with the solutions, but most of it comes from a place that we know a little bit more now than we used to, and people are trying their best to try to mitigate these risks while having people still have a good time, enjoy football. People make a livelihood from football and other sports. Try to make them as safe as possible for the players, because it's really, really grueling. So I hope this vlog has inspired you to look at the Super Bowl in a new light, to have a different appreciation for the players, win or lose. Obviously, my team's in the Super Bowl, right? But to look beyond that, not just teams and this thing. These players work extraordinarily hard and take a lot of risks to put themselves at this level to play football. So let's make sure we're all enjoying it, and we're enjoying it to the maximum, and that it's okay to have your kids play, different sports and this thing and that thing, but make sure that if they have injuries and so on, that it's well looked after and you don't take any, unnecessary risks, because it's not good to live in a bubble either, but just live out in the world with a bit more knowledge to arm yourselves with. And that's the end of this week's vlog. I hope you enjoyed the beautiful beach segment today, and I hope you enjoy hearing all about the NFL and football and concussions and CTE, because we want to live in a more informed, more scientific, and just more loving world. And I hope you spread that around. You are kind to yourself and you are kind to others this week. And please do enjoy the Super Bowl this week, win or lose, whether your team is. We're all coming together. It's a great time here in the United States of America and around the world to enjoy football. So I hope you enjoy the game, and I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.